Protect your car with 3W Liners all-weather floor mats. Made from durable materials like TPE and rubber, our mats are designed to withstand rain, snow, and mud with deep grooves to trap dirt and liquids. For a custom fit and advanced protection, visit 3W Liners. That's the number 3, WLINERS.com today. Are you ready to take control of your health? At 4U Health, we believe wellness and lab testing should be accessible, inclusive, and yes, fun. With our tech-powered at-home lab test, you save time and money while feeling your best. Say goodbye to long waits and office visits. Check your health on your own terms with 4U Health. Visit 4uhealth.com today and free yourself from traditional medicine. That's the number 4uhealth.com. This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Silent Witness, True Crime Cold Case Podcast with Angela.
Hello.
And Christina here. We are finishing, part 4 of Spree to Sentence. The story of Richard Tabler. How are you, Angela? Are you ready?
I am great. You?
I am. Any thoughts on last week's episode?
Richard is a hot, stinking mess.
I need you to look up his picture, too. Well, in a minute, when we're done.
Let me see on my phone.
Okay. But while you're doing that, I'm going to summarize the last 3 episodes. So Richard Lee Tabler was born February 5th, 1979 in California. He was an American spree killer, not a serial killer. Some people have called him he's not a serial killer. He's a spree killer. And he is responsible for 4 murders in Killeen, Texas in 2004. Tabler and his accomplice, Tim Payne, murdered strip club manager Muhammad Amin and his friend Frank Zaid during a planned meeting. 2 days later, Tabler killed 2 teenage dancers from the club, Tiffany and Amanda, believing they had implicated him in the murders of Amin.
Oh, yeah, he looked good and crazy. Oh, yes, he is.
Yeah. He was arrested shortly after and later convicted and sentenced to death for the murders of Amin and Frank. So, he's on death row. So, a few facts about death row. Death row inmates in Texas are housed on the Polanski unit, which is in Livingston, Texas. It is about 45 minutes from the actual death house in Huntsville, where they actually put him to death. The unit is the most highly secure men's unit. They're in one-man cells. They're locked up 23 hours a day. They're let out 3 times a week to shower. Of course, some inmates may have a bit more freedom, like day room and commissary. Just like any prison, they're classified, meaning their risk level. If they're low risk, medium risk, high risk. And what do you think Richard was?
High risk.
Yes.
To the 10th power. So, hey, look, Christina.
Yeah.
I'm looking at one of his photos on the internet, and he has a tattoo of Ashley on his arm. Isn't that the girl he murdered?
No, he murdered Amanda and Tiffany.
Okay, so Ashley was...
I don't know.
Okay, so he has Ashley on his tattooed on his arm.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know who Ashley is.
Wow. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. So inmates on death row, they don't receive any programs, but they do have iPads and they can watch very regulated movies that they have to buy. And they do have very regulated, simple email. They're fed their meals in their cells. The average male inmate on death row waits an average of 9 years for his appeals to run out and be put to death. The oldest case that is currently on death row is from 1977. And the newest case...
we've been feeding that person for that long?
Yeah.
Uh,
And his appeals haven't run out.
Wow.
There's about
Does anybody
100, there's about 200 men on death row. And there's 7
but since
women.
since 1977, we've been feeding that clown that long?
Yeah, and there's plenty others from a few from the 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah.
Just think how much tax dollars it done ate up.
Yeah. And plus all the appeals.
And free medical care.
Mhm.
Right.
So that's the oldest. The newest case on death row is from December 2024. And of course, like I said, there's 7 women on death row and about 200, about 196 to 200 men. I don't know the current number.
Mm.
Now, typically, in my experience, and I have been involved in a death penalty case, once you're sentenced by the county to death, the county jail immediately takes you to death row. They don't want to, especially somebody like Richard, who's such a troublemaker. They want him out of their jail.
Yes, I bet they were happy about
That night. And this is in my experience when I testified in the death penalty case. That night, as soon as they're sentenced to death, they go to death row. The county takes them.
Kick rocks, gone.
Bye. Peace out. We don't want you in our jail. So, that, of course, most prisoners, as you and I know, but our audience may not know, they have to wait and catch the bus to prison. Yep. But not somebody sentenced to death. You're out. Get out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now that I didn't know.
Yeah. That happened in my case. This happened in Richard's case, and that happened in my case, in the case I testified in. So, yeah. So he was such a problem that Bell County was like, get out. So after a short time on death row, Richard decided he wanted to forego his appeals and get a death date. This is very rarely done. The last time I heard this done was Tim McVeigh, the federal who bombed Oklahoma City. He forego his appeals and was put to death pretty quick. But again, this is rarely done. The court granted it, but Richard would ultimately change his mind. So that's just kind of a little tidbit we'll talk about. But let's jump ahead about 4 months of Richard being on death row. And I gave a little short description of death row because I wanted you to know how secure death row is, or so we thought. Richard became aware of a cell phone somebody else had in the unit, but investigators soon realized this was a serious problem. And yes, it's a serious problem in prison, but it's especially serious on death row, right?
Right.
Richard knew he had to buy airtime or minutes. These phones were those burner phones, I guess. I don't know. But more on that in a minute.
Okay.
So Richard decides he's going to call somebody. And who does he want to call? You think who do you think, who would we call on death row if we had a burner or a phone?
A mother or someone.
Yeah, you call family.
Children or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
No, he wanted to call Senator John Whitmire.
He got plans.
He's got plans, honey. I told you he's not done. So Senator Whitmire of Houston, who at the time was chairman of the Criminal Justice Committee, he was, I think, head person. He received an alarming call from Richard warning that he knows his daughter's names, where they live, and their ages.
He's making threats.
Yes, he loves that. He loves making threats. Come on now. And he basically knew everything, where they lived, their names, their ages of the daughters, and that this was the beginning of several calls to the senator. But according to Richard, Richard says he makes the call to the senator to report how the guards were beating inmates. Now, from a guy who has a history of threatening people, who the hell? What the hell are we going to, come on, give me a break.
Right.
So Whitmire engages Richard and, stated that he asked Richard in one of the calls, how did you get the phone? And Richard bragged he paid $2,100 for it and had a charger.
Oh. Well, now. Hmm.
Additionally, I mentioned that Richard simply wanted to fill in the senator on living conditions in the unit, which may have been true in the beginning, but the threats are not a way to get change.
Right.
You're not going to threaten him to get change. And we know that from our jobs, our previous
No,
jobs.
that's right. That's right.
Threats aren't going to change nothing. Not that we ever threatened anybody. Let me put that, but I think that most, we know that change doesn't occur no matter what.
Right.
In our jobs. So, of course, the senator reported this to the Office of the Inspector General, and they began an investigation.
Right. Okay.
They retrieved phones and subscriber information that led the phone to Tabler, to Richard. He gave investigators, he gave up the phone without incident. Now, how did these phones get in a secure facility? Well,
the inmates are not going to speak because most of them have they have ethics. They can kill folks and lie and cheat and stuff like that, but they have their honor code, no snitching, stitches for stitches.
Yep. And this has been an ongoing problem for every day, for county jail to every unit in TDC, Jay.
Even so, more now.
Oh yeah, and it's harder to smuggle anything into death unit. It's harder to do it that way. I'm sure things get snuck in all the time, but you just think of death row, you're not going to have as much nonsense, if that
unless the guards are doing it.
So, because of this, the entire Texas prison system went into lockdown. This is roughly 112 units across the state. Most of the time, units themselves will go on lockdown, but not the entire state goes in lockdown. This happens due to an escape, which I will note, when the Texas 7 escaped in 2000, it led to a massive lockdown of every unit. And I personally had a tour planned for TDC, Jay, and Death Row, which got canceled because of these fools escaping. So the Texas 7 have a personal vendetta because they ruined my chance of a tour.
If you don't stop it.
Fuck them. Anyway. No, I was so excited about that. I wanted so bad to go. Anyway. Also, all 7, the Texas 7, they were caught and they're on death row. And Richard mentions them throughout, but also just recently the whole state went on lockdown because of drugs. So it happens, but it's very, very rare that the entire state goes on lockdown.
Right.
So Richard mentions Newberry, which was one of the Texas 7, as a troublemaker on the row. I just thought it was interesting tie-in to my previous job and how it, I don't know, slight tie-in to this, Anyway.
Okay.
I digress. So basically, once this happens, every cell in every unit is locked down until it's searched, and then that unit, that lockdown will be lifted once every single spot is searched.
It's searched.
Yep. When on lockdown, inmates are in their cell 23 hours a day. No visitation is allowed.
Everything comes to a halt.
Yep. They maybe get an hour of rec time a day and maybe a few showers a week. Maybe you can, didn't you used to work in a unit?
Who, me?
In parole?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I worked as a institutional parole officer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
and I wasn't there. I was a roving. I went in and got out and went back to office.
Gotcha. Okay.
It all began with a simple idea, cutting handles off old ski sticks to create better pull-up bars. This sparked the creation of the revolutionary Engels 90 handles. After testing over 70 prototypes with 300 athletes, our patented handles were launched in 2018. We continue to push the boundaries of strength training. Join us in making your training more natural and effective. Visit engels90.com to learn more and revolutionize your workout.
Elevate your experience with Grenco Science, the leaders in cutting-edge vaporizers. Whether you're at home or on the go, our sleek, powerful devices deliver smooth, consistent hits every time. Quality you can trust, innovation you can feel. Grenco Science, take your vapor game to the next level. Visit us at grencoscience.com.
Anyway, so the investigation led to 19 other cell phones on death row alone and 2,800 calls that were made by several inmates, including Richard. Again, cell phones continue to be a security threat to the prison, and it's a huge problem all across the United States and Texas. And you may want to ask why. Why is it such a big deal? These prisoners have cell phones.
Well, why is it such a big deal?
Well, they can plan murders, plan drug drops.
That's right.
Many times drugs are brought in what's called
threaten victims.
Right. Threaten witnesses.
Yes. Plan hits do so much.
Run their organization, whether it's a gang or
look for victims, find victims.
Yeah. But know
my thing is this. If so many folks are in the prison, who's going in and out the prison every day?
Yeah.
Who's leaving the premises every day?
I know.
I don't know. Yeah.
You know, and they bring drugs in their butts called a keister stash.
What?
So they're planning drugs, and so that's how visitors.
It's called a what?
A keister stash.
Oh, I've never heard of it. But
what?
You learn something every day.
There you go. They bring it in their butts, or they eat them and then they poop them out.
Yeah, but that could be so dangerous because if they, but the keister stash?
Yeah, it's called a keister stash.
Wow, now.
Yeah, so, you know, that's, no cell phones are not allowed. And they're in prison. I mean, they committed a crime. They're in prison. They shouldn't, I mean, not everybody in there is guilty. I know, but
right.
They shouldn't have cell phones. Come on now. And no drugs.
Shouldn't.
So let's go back to Richard.
Okay.
The phone he was caught using was traced to a store in Waco. And he made 44 calls to Georgia, where Lorraine Tabler, his mom, lived. Upon further investigation, it turns out Lorraine bought minutes for the phone. So
she should have went to jail too.
Yep, she did. She flew into Austin because she was on a trip to visit her son and was arrested at the airport and charged with prohibited item in a correctional facility. Which
she should have took her butt to jail.
Which is a felony.
Yes.
Eventually, Richard's sister was also arrested for the same thing. She bought minutes too.
Yeah.
Now, they're felonies, but both got probation for the offense and community service. They had no record, so come on, we know they're going to get on probation. But Richard did receive an additional 10 years for that. He took the rap and
So you got life, then you get 10 more years.
Like
wow.
It matters. Yeah.
Okay.
So just when you think we're done, when we're wrapping up, Richard, we got something else. So several months after the cell phone incident, Richard had a Methodist chaplain smuggle letters out of the prison.
Wait, a chaplain?
Yep.
What kind of voodoo that he got on these people? What? And where's he getting all this money from to,
I don't know that he paid the chaplain. And I will say, as far as the cell phones, the reports were a guard smuggled him in. So
right, but he said he pays a certain amount of money for the phone. So at first, I almost said, "Hey, where did he get that money from?" But now we got a chaplain bringing in the phone. I told you those people that are going in and out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
This chaplain was supposed to be helping spread the word of God to inmates on death row.
Yeah,
And
he was spreading
now
AT&T services.
I'm gonna kind of bring up a theory.
Okay.
These letters were in response to the cell phone, and the letters were rambling, in essence, threatening the life of the senator. So
Okay.
he wasn't done with the senator yet. But here's my theory on this letter. So it should be noted that there were little details about this.
Mhm.
I do know that mail is monitored by prison, except legal mail. Legal mail is not looked at and is not searched and cannot be looked at, just like legal phone calls cannot be listened to.
Mm.
So if it's marked legal, it cannot be read by jail staff. So
So anybody can put legal on there.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but the chaplain did admit to smuggling the letters out. So I don't know what happened. I don't know many.
Did we put some silver bracelets on the chaplain too?
I don't know. Again, I don't.
He should have had some silver cuffs too.
Yeah, it's a pretty new silver bracelets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, let's jump forward to recent times. Richard, now 46, said he found faith. According to his book and other research, he was a changed man. Due to his risk level, he spent a lot of time on what is known as death watch, which is typically where they move inmates with a death date.
Yeah.
And that was the highest security. So, he had cameras in his cell. He was just the highest security possible. Let's see. So anyway, he waived his appeals in the beginning and then continued his appeals. So he just couldn't decide what he wanted to do.
Right.
Richard does befriend many notorious Texas inmates while in jail. He tells a lot of stories, which I'm not going to get into. I will mention George Rivas, who, you'll laugh at me, who was the ringleader of the Texas Seven.
Okay. I remember the Texas Seven.
Yeah, anytime I can bring up the Texas Seven, I'm going to. But Rivas ended up on death watch. He had a date. Richard did end up getting married while he's in prison. I don't know. His family now says he's a changed man, finding faith, and leading a prison ministry.
Well, good. Take your changed self to the chair.
He quotes as having regret not only for murdering the 4 people, but for hurting his mother and sister with a cell phone debacle. He does say multiple times that he regrets hurting his family.
Yeah. But I understand people do change, but still, go and light him up and do what they need to do.
Yeah, I got a few thoughts, but okay, in a minute. But Richard's death warrant was signed in December 2024, and he was executed at 6:38 p.m. on February 13th, 2025.
Okay.
During his last statement, he expressed remorse for the victims and for his family. And he did seem in the last statement, I'm not going to read it because it's kind of long, but it did seem like genuine remorse.
Well, then, of course, you about to get the death job, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts about him changing? Do you think he did? Do you think it was just...
Yes, I do believe people can change because I believe in the power of God. But it's just because you change and you have a changed life and things like that, it doesn't mean that you still don't serve the consequences of your actions.
Right. But how many people have we seen find God in jail? And it's not genuine.
Jailhouse Jesus.
Yeah, and it's not genuine.
It's not genuine. But, I mean, I can't speak on someone's relationship because only Jesus knows the heart. God knows the heart.
100%.
But
That's exactly.
He says he changes stuff like that. But like I said, I believe in you can change because that's the power of God on someone. And as a human, I can't speak on that. But you still have to serve your consequences, even though you're a changed person and stuff like that. So
And
Yeah,
that's
but I hope people change.
and that's exactly what, my thoughts are, is that my thoughts that we will never know someone's heart, their true
Right.
heart and their true reading. But reading the book, the book is filled with rage and excuses,
Mm-hmm.
and not in some, but not a lot of justification. But and that was
Right.
in the beginning when he's talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and toward the end he does talk about remorse and all that. But
Right.
maybe it was because he felt the rage at the time, and that's why he was
Right.
writing. I don't know.
Yeah. But like I said, I can understand him feeling rage in the beginning and things like that, and then in the end and stuff like that, because God has the power of taking bitterness and rage and anger and changing it. So, you know, yeah, but
And
still got some consequences.
yeah, 100%. That's what I say, is that people can change, and I hope he did, but it still doesn't change what he did and the
Right.
horrible,
And,
horrible atrocity crimes he
and
committed.
yes, and once you can't give somebody else their life back. That's a life that God gave that you cannot repay
Right.
ever. And so yes, yes. And he
Anyway,
didn't look, and he didn't give those people a chance to get their life right with God. He got his
mm-mm,
right. So he didn't give
100%.
those people a chance.
And
Uh,
that's the
so
thing. It's like he had 20 years to change, but
yes,
those girls didn't have
yes.
20 years. That
No,
16-year-old didn't
those
have time to change her life and have kids
right,
and
right.
get a job.
You
And
can right. So, but me, I don't know. I shouldn't say what I want to say, but no,
yeah, I mean, listen, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for him because,
I don't.
yeah,
I'm just like this with this death penalty thing. The lethal injection, people kill people in such horrible ways, and then they go to get a little needle slit in their arm and just go to
go to
sleep.
sleep.
Where is old Smokey and Sparky at?
I know. It's in a museum that I wanted to go see, but I couldn't.
Yes, yes.
I'm bitter.
Where is that French guillotine?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
listen, I agree with you
So
100%.
I don't think you should kill people in such horrible ways, and then you get the lethal injection, you just take a couple of breaths and you just gone
Yeah.
peacefully. No.
Yep. I agree.
But
I thought it was
so
an interesting case, and I wanted to cover it just because I don't know. The minute I started reading about him, because I tend to always go look at who has a death
mhm,
date, and then I'll go
right.
look at their case. And since he was from the Central Texas area, I decided, I'm going to look him up. And I just got fascinated with this case just because the mayhem, just the nonsense, the disgusting lack of caring about life,
The audacity, yeah, the lack of remorse,
Mm-hmm.
the disregard for human life,
Yep.
but it's so many of them out there like that.
Yep. Okay. Well, we have wrapped up part 4 of From Spree to Sentence, and hope everybody enjoyed that little series. And then we will be back next week with a new story. So everybody go follow us on Silent Witness TX on all the social medias. And if you have an idea for a show, please send it to silentwitnesswaco@gmail.com or on one of our posts. Let us know what you think, what you want to hear, what our audience wants to hear. Any closing thoughts, Angela?
No, it's just a real solemn situation because so many people lost their lives, and
Yeah.
just think 5 people in all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the last one kind of deserved it.
Of course,
Yeah.
yes, he did.
Okay. Well, that's it, everybody. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.